Good morning. It's Monday, October 12, 2015. I'm Yael Avi, and this is a special I-24 News morning edition covering the recent wave of violence rocking Israel and the occupied territories. An Israeli Arab stabbed and wounded 4 Jews after ramming his car into them near the northern kibbutz of Gan Shmuel yesterday, the latest in a string of lone wolf terror attacks around Israel. 16 Israelis were wounded over the weekend in the country as bloody clashes between Palestinians and Israelis continue, with hostilities showing no signs, sadly, of letting down. It was a sad culmination this weekend to a week that saw at least 12 incidents of stabbings around the country, followed by clashes and demonstrations. Now, while Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas seem to be trying to avoid an escalation, frustrated young Palestinians, most of them, mostly have defied efforts to restore calm and set a wave of stabbings across Israel. Separately, the two leaders, Benjamin Netanyahu and Mahmoud Abbas, have pointed the finger at each other for the escalating violence, of course. Now, all in all, 4 Israelis and at least 30 Palestinians, that's the number that we know thus far, have been killed in the last week, raising concerns that another Palestinian uprising might be underway. Here's a report about the latest from Israel and the occupied territories. Let's take a look and break it down after that.
As the new week dawned, it seemed the violence in Israel had calmed down slightly, but despite fewer violent events, the situation continues to escalate. Early Sunday, an Israeli police officer was lightly injured when a 31-year-old Palestinian woman detonated an explosive device in her car in a checkpoint outside Jerusalem.
A female terrorist walked out of the vehicle after the vehicle was pulled over by police officers. As she walked towards the police officers, there was an explosion that took place in the vehicle. She was on her way to carry out a terrorist attack inside Jerusalem.
The Israeli Air Force launched an airstrike in Gaza Strip overnight, following several rockets from the Strip which landed in Israeli open territory, and the attempts of dozens of Gazans to cross the border on Saturday. The airstrike killed a Palestinian woman and her daughter. Hundreds of angry Palestinian protesters took to the streets of major cities in Gaza and the West Bank, throwing rocks at police. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pointed a finger at who he sees is responsible for the current deterioration.
This incitement comes from Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, and the Islamic movement in Israel.
The current escalation poses a tough challenge to Netanyahu, who less than 1 year ago promised security to his voters. And yet a latest poll, which was published in Israeli Channel 2 over the weekend, shows that 73% of the Israeli Jewish public is not satisfied with Netanyahu's performance. Though this wave of violence may fade, the next few days do not look promising. Leaders of the Arab community in Israel declared a general strike for Tuesday. On Wednesday, a group of Arab lawmakers intend visiting Jerusalem's Flashpoint Temple Mount Noble Sanctuary, despite Netanyahu's ban on parliament members entering the compound.
This also in overnight, Border Patrol and police forces, Israeli Border Patrol and police forces arrested 17 East Jerusalem residents overnight, and that's including 4 minors. I am joined in studio by Haaretz senior defense correspondent Amir Owen. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Gail.
By I-24 News correspondent Mohammed Al-Qasim. Good morning to you. And before we break anything down, let's go live first straight to I-24 News correspondent. Actually not with us, but we'll be joined by Tal Shalev very shortly from Jerusalem. Actually, I want to start with you. Because yesterday, I mean, it's hard to make sense of the amount of incidents that's being reported in the Israeli media. Yesterday, there was a fear of even further escalation because a young woman, 31, which veers away from the stereotypical 18, 19-year-old stabbers that we've seen coming out of the Palestinian community, tried to detonate a car. Is this, in your mind, an escalation in this wave of violence, or is this another young woman who is just trying to, make a stand, so to speak?
At this point, I don't think that there is an escalation. It wasn't an escalation. This woman worked and basically committed this on her own, this act on her own. We have seen actually most of these stabbings and even the protesters in the West Bank that are going out, they're young Palestinians. They don't belong to any Tanzim, to any clandestine group. They don't belong to Fatah, to Hamas, to Jihad Islamic. Basically, they're frustrated, young Palestinian
Who don't see a
men
future.
who don't see future for themselves, and they are frustrated even with the Palestinian Authority, and they're taking it upon themselves to go out and show their frustration. This is one way of doing it. Also in Jerusalem, Arab young men, they're frustrated because they're under Israeli municipality law, but they're not getting the services that other Jewish communities
Israeli
in
residents would be
exactly.
getting there.
Exactly.
So we're seeing young frustrated. There's talk also about social media being very much an instigator in these attempts to go out and hurt civilians. Have you had a chance to look at the social media when it comes to what is being said there? How are they finding their...
Social media is playing a very dangerous game now. There are many accounts on Facebook, let's say, the fake accounts or even regular accounts that are spreading rumors. So one account would come out and say, we heard or we can confirm a stabbing or an attack on this location, or someone just got killed, but the news later comes as it's just fake or inaccurate news.
Inaccurate news. Going to you, Amir Oren, because it seems to be a fact that these young men, young women that are going out and perpetrating these attacks, which can be by knives or even, I think I saw something in lines of a vegetable peeler the other day. Young, despondent, very, very frustrated young Palestinians who don't seem to see a future. How can the Israeli Security Administration really combat this? Because I think what we're seeing from Israeli citizens is a lot of fear, but the administration, especially the security forces, what are they trying to do?
Let's try to frame it a bit more accurately than has been titled, headlined in the Israeli media. What we have here is a low-intensity civil war. Now, civil wars in the past were conducted by organizations or hefts of nations,
right,
organized with a chain of command. You had a commander-in-chief, you had a military structure, you had units, you had uniformed personnel obeying orders. You had instructions, you had planning. What you have here is purely civil. You have, as Mohammed said, you have individuals who on their own get up in the morning, they do not wait for training or for instruction, and they do what they please. Now, this is combined with the fact that traditionally you had linear chains of command, top to bottom. What you have with social media is horizontal.
Right.
This is no longer the old way, and therefore the Israeli structure, which is still linear, you are talking about a police or a security agency or the military, they operate differently. They cannot really block this phenomenon, and if they try to do it for long, the Palestinians will have achieved a greater achievement, and that is distracting the Israeli security forces, and mostly the Israeli defense forces, from their regular training for other military operations.
Right.
This has already been going on. If you take regular infantry battalions from their
positions,
their assigned roles, you have a victory already, and this cannot be prolonged. Now, the Israeli government, because it's in a crisis mode, cannot plan long-term and see how to get out of this politically.
Speaking of the Israeli government, and which is a perfect transition, because I think that one of the things that we're witnessing, especially if you're living in this region, be it in the West Bank or in Greater Israel, you see that the streets are kind of empty, and I think that's the biggest challenge for the Israeli government is how to deal with this. What is the long-term solution, or what is the solution at this moment? Let's go straight live to I-24 News correspondent, diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev, who is standing by in Jerusalem. Tal, good morning to you. And the question to you, Benjamin Netanyahu. We are looking at approximately 10 days that in them we saw 2 to 3 to sometimes 4 stabbings across the country. Benjamin Netanyahu, what is his next move?
Well, Netanyahu yesterday convened a second security cabinet meeting to discuss the escalation in the security situation. This is the second meeting he's convened since in the past 10 days. At the end of the meeting yesterday, Netanyahu announces that he has instructed legal authorities to find evidence in order to be able to outlaw the Islamic movement, the northern branch of the Islamic movement. Netanyahu is very much focusing his efforts, both domestic and internationally, on pointing out incitement coming from Palestinian and Arab-Israeli factors. But Netanyahu has been, and this has been basically the pattern, he's been announcing, he's been holding security consultations and announcing various steps since last week. But we might point out what he hasn't announced. He has not announced a settlement expansion, despite the fact he is under a lot of pressure from his own right-wing nationalist camp to announce a settlement construction plan. He has not. He has instructed Jewish and Arab politicians not to go to Temple Mount to try and bring down the flames. And he has also resisted calls from some of the security branches to impose a complete closure on the West Bank, explaining that this could be perceived as collective punishment. So Netanyahu has to deal with two fronts. On the one hand, he wants to calm down the situation inside, but he has to be very attentive to the international community in order to have some diplomatic capital if the escalation continues. Netanyahu will be needing that.
Will be needing that. Tal Shalev staying with us for this block. We're joined on the phone now by former head of the Israel's Internal Security Agency and current Yesh Atid Minister Mr. Jacob Perry. Mr. Perry, good morning to you. I'm sure that as somebody who comes so distinguished from within the security establishment in Israel, if you're looking at what's going on right now, do you think that the defense minister of Israel right now and the Israeli prime minister should be doing anything different?
Good morning, Lucy.
Yael.
Yael, sorry. I don't know that, I don't think that that's the right time now to give all kinds of advices. We are aware of the fact that we are in a high wave of terrorism, mainly done by terrorists who plan their acts hours or days before, or weren't sent by organized terror organization. So you cannot deal with intelligence. You can only to be aware, to protect, to enlarge the amount of forces, and to be, in a way, satisfied from the awareness and from the courageous events done by citizens and by policemen and military guys.
When Israeli leaders, per se, let's say the Israeli Jerusalem mayor, calls on civilians, Mr. Perry, to walk around carrying guns, do you think that's something that should be done?
Yeah, I'm not against it, but we have to keep proportions. First of all, in all Israel, we have 150,000 citizens that are carrying licenses for arms. And secondly, we have to be very, very careful when we are calling, because people tend sometimes, because of the environment, because of the hysteric times, to understand it as a license to kill. It's not the aim. But I think that if it gives the citizens, if it gives the people more secure feeling.
Sadly, you know, some people say that that's what American civilians usually state, that they feel more secure if they have a gun, and we know what happens there. You know, I think that would be the fear.
Yeah, exactly what I meant. So we have to be quite careful. As I mentioned, I am not against it, but we have to take it in a...
Now, when it comes, being careful and vigilant and true, I mean, the one thing that we can agree upon is that civilians of Israel are terrified. Walking the streets of Israel, even in Tel Aviv, which is ridiculous, the streets seem to be empty. That said, when the Israeli Prime Minister doesn't seem to come out with a strategy, but says that he hopes for a broader government, would your party, Yesh Atid, that clearly sat in the government in the last round, would your party consider, given the situation, entering that government to try and stabilize things?
Well, I'm not my party's spokesman, but I can tell you that we are not going to join just such a government, which is a right-wing government, which is because not only me personal, Yesh Atid thinks that the solution is not a military solution. And we have to initiate. And I don't want to bother you this morning with the sorts of solutions or political solutions. But we are not going to join a government which is thinking that only a military and an operational solution. We have to talk about a political solution. And I don't think, as far as I know, that this government is heading for any political solution, so that's not the right place to be.
Mr. Perry, Jacob Perry of Israeli opposition party, Yesh Atid, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. Mohammed, you're listening to these words when it comes to, and also Tal Shalev discussing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's presumed actions or trying to calm things down. Where is Mahmoud Abbas in this?
Well, first, before we go to Mahmoud Abbas, I think Prime Minister Netanyahu is living in denial when he tries to put the blame on the northern Islamic movement in Israel. I'm not saying that it's not the case, but rather than him being brave enough, as well as President Abbas being brave enough, those politicians who are in charge of these two governments, and going further and taking brave steps forward to move the peace negotiations that collapsed last year forward, they're both laying the blame on each other. Netanyahu is not even saying that maybe this, this government of his that is way far right is not helping in moving the peace negotiations forward. Now, speaking of Abbas, Abbas is right in the middle. He doesn't want to come out publicly and say that I am in favor of these demonstrations, but at the same time, he's not moving the Palestinian security forces in any of the demonstrations throughout the West Bank. We've been in Ramallah more than once. We've covered these demonstrations, and not even once we have seen a Palestinian police officer within 2-3 kilometers from these demonstrations.
He's letting this happen.
I spoke to a Palestinian police officer a couple of days ago, junior rank police officer, who said that we were instructed not to be here in uniform, to come in plain clothes, and they just monitor the situation, see what's going on. This guy didn't say that he was part of Fatah, but I understood that that's what he meant when he said when it's time, when we get orders from above, we will come out with our weapons and use it. But for the foreseeable future, there is no orders from neither faction or from the Palestinian Authority, because it's not in the best interest of the Palestinian Authority for these demonstrations to continue. Abbas's popularity has sunk in the last year or so, because there's, again, Palestinians look at this as there's no hope for the future for them.
All of this coming also, we have to remind people, after the UN Security the General Assembly in New York, where basically, it was quite evident that the world doesn't really want to deal with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, so to speak. But Amir Owen, before you continue, I have a question to you, because I'm looking at that in all of the media, mostly around the country, less so internationally, mostly around Israel, warning against a third uprising, etc., etc. That doesn't seem, that's what the security establishment is worried about as well. Because looking at the demonstrations in the West Bank, there is the potential of flare-up.
Well, the country is panic-stricken.
Right.
Just as you said earlier, streets are empty. You used to live in New York. You remember the feeling when you had to hesitate crossing Central Park.
Right.
Is there a mugger? But this was a law enforcement problem. Here you have a security problem, because you really don't know where it's coming from. And it's ridiculous to speak about, as Netanyahu did in the cabinet session, to speak about measures against the West Bank or East Jerusalem, when you saw last night at Gan Shmuel that it was an Arab Israeli from Umm-el-Fachem decided to go into his car and ram a few people at a bus stop, and then try to kill them in another way. So you can't stop it just by administrative measures. You have to plan ahead, and you have to get some diplomatic initiative. Just security measures won't do it, because there is no deterrence. Perhaps the first guy who went out and stabbed didn't understand that there is a real chance of being killed. But the second and third and fourth, they all know
that they can be killed.
They will not
survive the attack. Yeah. They will not come home. But thinking of that, and I'm looking at the international community's reaction to all of this, which doesn't seem to be great. And if Tal Shalev is still with us from Jerusalem, sadly not with us anymore, but doesn't seem to be great. Nobody seems to be coming over. The quartet is flying over in low key. There doesn't seem to be an international force trying to stop whatever might be happening in here.
Well, because perhaps this is not the time for puns, but it's deja vu. It's every time the world looks at the Middle East, okay, Arabs and Israelis, Muslims and Jews are again at each other's throats. Now they are stabbing. Earlier they were bombing.
Here they're doing it again. No, I lived in New York. I think the line is...
There is more to it than just that. We in the last 4 years we've seen a change, a geopolitical change in the region, where we have now every country that in the past where it would be supporting Palestinians, even just rhetorically speaking, they're not doing it. You have Syria is in chaos. You have Iraq is in chaos. Even Jordan has its own issues with refugees and economy. So and Egypt at the same in the same.
This becomes a much lesser story. Also.
Exactly. Each country has its own issues to deal with, and the Palestinian issue isn't on the front burner.
But this is the irony. This is the irony. Just when Israel won its argument that this is not the core of the conflict, now it complains that there is not enough attention.
International intervention or any
what do you expect?
concern.
If people are looking at other conflicts, why do you expect them to look at yours?
But speaking of the conflict, there's something that doesn't change, and that is the problem and where we're seeing most of the bulk of these young Palestinian youths actually coming out of, and that would be the West Bank. And we're joined now via Skype, coming to us via Skype live, actually from the Efrat settlement in the West Bank. Dr. Ronen Shoval, professors for a strong Israel. You are actually the West Bank settlement of Efrat, chairman of Professors for a Strong Israel. Dr. Ronen Shoval, I am asking you, because you're living in the midst, in the heart of this problem, so to speak. That would be the West Bank, as some people, which the international community refers to as the occupied territories. Where do we stand now when it comes to the residents, the settlers of the West Bank, as to what is going on right now?
Good morning. Well, first of all, I think that we all in Israel feel insecurity. We can feel it yesterday in Gan Shmuel, and you can feel it in Ashkelon, you can feel it in Afula, you can feel it all over. It's not about settlements. Let's say the truth. The problem that we are facing right now is the attempt to import to Israel the Muslim winter. So we had this kind of uprising all around in the countries all around us, and now the Arabs in Israel are trying to do exactly the same.
How can they have an Arab winter or anything? Because if they were never civilians, Muslim winter, but the Palestinians of the West Bank are not civilians of any country. So
that's first of all, yesterday, as you saw yesterday, the person who tried to murder the Jews were Arab from Israel. And many of the Arabs who are doing it are Israeli citizens.
But 13 of them were young Palestinians at the age of 17 and 18 coming out of the West Bank, people who feel they have no future.
No, I disagree. People make terror because they have future. They have future, and they have hope to destroy Israel. We can play with imagine and say that two-state will be a solution, but it won't be a solution because territory is not the problem. The problem is radical Islam. So we can have here.
One can say that Islam becomes radical when people have no country to live in.
I'm sorry. They are. You can see the behavior of Islam people all around the world, not only in Israel. So you can have four kind of solutions here. Whether Jews won't live here or Arabs won't live here, or we will continue to fight. And if you really want peace now, just let me finish. If you really want a solution very quick, you can convert to Islam. But if you're refusing to convert to Islam, you need to understand that this is the situation. Radical Islam is flourishing here in the Middle East and killing everyone who is not like him.
What about radical Judaism that can kill the members of a family in the West Bank? What about radical Judaism, one can say, that of an Israeli kid that goes out and stabs Palestinians? So what is the argument to that? Is that also radical Islam, or is that radical? Is that not radicalism because nobody's sitting down and discussing what's going on?
Well, I completely disagree with you. I think that the fact that there are Jews who behave like animals and doing these horrific things is a disgrace, and we're doing anything in our power to stop it. but you just please be honest with yourself.
I'm
and put
being
the
very
numbers.
honest with myself. I'm asking you, Dr. Shraga.
Now, if you put in every 10,000 cases of radical Islam murdering each other, by the way, not only us, but also Shia killing Sunni killing Shia and Shia killing Musa, then you have in the case of 1 to 10,000 Jews making horrible stuff. And I completely disagree with it.
Dr. Shraga, I know I have to ask you to stay with us because I think these fears and these, and the animosities of, radical Islam and whatnot is something that transpires throughout the entire region. And there's one item that we also have to mention, and that's that all of this might also escalate down south in Israel, and that's another fear that seems to be something that Hamas actually does not want. I want us to go live straight to Gaza first. Now, we're joined by Ron Friedman, I-24 News editor and correspondent. Ron, good morning to you. We saw also in the midst of all of this a huge demonstration yesterday on the border in Gaza. And there's a fear by both establishments that this can also trickle and transpire into a conflict down south. Does that seem to be the case? And this morning it seems to be quiet there.
Good morning. Yes, like you said, we're here at the right opposite the city of Gaza in Kibbutz Nachal Oz on the border. So far this morning it's been quiet, but just a few hours ago, yesterday evening, a rocket was fired from within Gaza, landed in open territory just a bit north of us here in the Eshkol region. No one was injured, and so far none of the usual suspects took responsibility for this. We're talking about the main militant groups here in Gaza, Hamas, Islamic Jihad. Neither of those groups took responsibility. The Israeli security officials believe that those who fired it are fringe, small Salafist group. In any case, Hamas, the group that's in power here in Gaza, seems to actually to be interested in keeping things calm. Like you said, yesterday there were protests the day before as well. Residents of Gaza from Shajaiya, the Gaza neighborhood that's right opposite us, came over to the border, held riots, threw Molotov cocktails, but it didn't go anything beyond that. A few days before, some residents did manage to breach the fence, but they were arrested and many of them were turned back. We're talking about a slight escalation here in recent days. I mean, since Friday, we're talking about 11 Palestinians that have been killed, 9 of them in that incident when they breached the fence, and then 2 others were killed when an Israeli retaliatory airstrike hit Hamas infrastructure and accidentally, according to the IDF, also caused the collapse of their house and the death of 2 Palestinians, a woman and her young daughter.
And her young daughter in an overnight attack. Sadly, what we're seeing, and thank you very much for joining us, that would be Ron Friedman, I-24 News, Ron Friedman from southern Israel on the Israeli-Gaza border. Sadly, I think what we're seeing, and that's all the time we have, we're seeing a lot of frustrated civilians and terrified civilians on both sides and no leadership. I would sum that as up. I said that in that way. When we get back, an exclusive interview with the Jerusalem mayor, Nir Barakat. Stay with us. First, the news as in every morning. I-24 News special morning edition. Wave of violence rocking Israel and the West Bank, and for decades, Jerusalem has been at the center of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Very shortly, we will be going live to an interview with the mayor of Jerusalem, a man who's actually in charge of the city that seems to be flaring all of this up. We'll be going live to him very shortly. For now, though, we are going to stay with our own Ami Kaufman, I-24 News contributor, with the headlines that are actually dealing with this wave of violence, of what Amir Owen called low-intensity civil war.
Low-intensity civil war. I like that one. That's actually, I think that's pretty good.
Should be how to describe this at this point. Yes.
Yeah. You know, we could compare headlines for hours over the hundreds of incidents that are happening, pretty much hour after hour after hour. So I just thought, let's focus on one incident that really shows the gap between Palestinian and Israeli media. If you remember, there was a car bomb that blew up just outside of Jerusalem at a checkpoint. Israeli media and also mainstream media were portraying it pretty straightforward. A woman was driving a bit suspiciously. Eventually, a cop pulled her over, stopped. She then pressed the button, blew up the car. The cop that was close then was lightly injured, and she was severely injured with burns, taken to the hospital. Pretty straightforward right there. Let's take a look at this headline from the Ma'an Palestinian news agency and see how this only one story is how it's portrayed. The police say car bomb in quotes, okay, set off. Witnesses say it was an electrical fault. So one of the witnesses, by the way, who wishes to remain named, says the woman was driving with her child in the car. This is something that we did not hear in any of the other Israeli reports. When about 300 meters before the permanent Israeli military checkpoint near the village of Al-Zaim, an electrical problem ignited a small fire inside the car. The woman panicked and started to scream. She managed to pull over. The driver's airbag deployed, emitting drizzles of powder. Excuse me.
Right.
So this is how the Palestinians are telling the story, and this is the lead story on the Ma'an news agency during those hours.
And it's hard to decipher facts because I also read in Israeli media that supposedly she yelled Allah Akbar.
That's also true. I heard that in Israeli.
Yeah, that she yelled Allah Akbar, which is the signature mark for somebody.
They also said that there were some gas bombs or canisters, excuse me, inside.
But then you see a headline like that, and you can also see that how something like this can even further flare up the region within the West Bank and in Israel, and it's so hard to decipher facts. And as we said, social media also playing a huge role here. Yes.
Just keeping with this issue a bit longer. Inside Israeli society, of course, as well, there's a huge gap in how things are portrayed as well. And I just want to take a look at two op-eds, opinion pieces, from the left and from the right. First, on the left, something from 972 magazine. First of all, a full disclosure. I am a contributor to that project. It is a project of Israelis and Palestinian journalists.
Responsible journalist, yes.
And this is from Noam Shezaf, and he, of course, is blaming the Israelis for what's going on. And the money quote in this piece is, the Palestinians have always been promised, at least, if the violence stops, we'll talk and you'll get your state. But it's now clear that the dynamic is the exact opposite. The calm on the ground made Israelis believe that they can enjoy peace and prosperity without ending the occupation. The tragic paradox is that it was the intifadas that led to Israeli concessions like Oslo, the Gaza disengagement, while the peace years resulted in more hardline Israeli positions and the expansions of settlements. And on the other side, let's see Ynet and Ben-Dror Yemini. And look at this headline: the cycle of violence, hope won't help. The most painful wave of terror occurred during the 1980s. Those were the years of Oslo. It seemed that a solution was at hand. Did this bring quiet? Not at all.
Not at all. No, it just shows you also the the different opinion within the Israeli society,
very wide.
Exactly, which is another thing to look at. But we're going to go live now to Jerusalem, which, as we said, has been at the center of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and the city, holy to both Jews and Muslim, has been the major flashpoint of violence in recent weeks. Maybe where it all started, everything. At least 6 separate terror incidents in the last 10 days alone took place in Jerusalem, and despite police sending in massive reinforcements, Netanyahu calling for 4 more units of border control, the residents' sense of personal security is so poor that City Hall has urged people who are permitted to carry firearms to do so and use their guns for self-defense. The city's mayor, Nir Barakat, very, very happy to have him join us. He was, you yourself, Mr. Barakat, good morning to you. You wield a Glock pistol while walking the streets in Jerusalem. Do you really think, Mr. Barakat, first of all, good morning to you, and I'm asking you, as you said, do you think the solution for what is going on right now is to give every Israeli resident, or to let every Israeli resident in Jerusalem, or to, to ask them to carry guns?
Well, first of all, good morning. I think we have to adjust to the threat we're challenged with. This time, unfortunately, because of the incitements, you have an amount of people that are trying to terrorize using knives and independent attacks by independent people. And usually they look for places that there's no police. While we have a significant amount more police in the streets, sometimes the terrorists looked in gaps between policemen. And indeed, if you look backwards in the last few years, you will find that many ex-patriot, army patriots, and people with combat experience that carry their guns with them are the ones that neutralize the terrorists. So it's only natural that we call for people that have experience, that have a licensed gun to be in the streets. In Israel, unlike everywhere else in the world, it's a very big advantage, and that's actually what's happening.
No, a big advantage, one can argue that. I think the fear is turning Israel or turning Jerusalem into the wild, wild west. We know what happens sometimes when people carry guns, case in point, the United States, what we're seeing there. That said, you just mentioned incitement.
That's true.
You just mentioned incitement and terror, but at the end of the day, the bulk of the people coming out and doing these stabbings, what many in the media, in the international media, are calling lone wolf attacks, are very frustrated, many will say, young, frustrated Palestinians, and a lot of them from East Jerusalem, who feel that they do not have a future. Very frustrated. They see, infrastructure in East Jerusalem. They will argue that they are living a low-class life, that the city of Jerusalem that you're head of is not taking good care of them.
Don't confuse the facts. This time, the reason people are taking and going to create terror attacks is because of the incitements on the Temple Mount, period. I speak to the leaders of the Arab residents of Jerusalem. What spiked this round of violence, unlike other rounds of violence in the past, is exactly that point of lies told as if though Israeli government wants to change the status quo on the Temple Mount, which is a lie. However, people fall for that. And so we have two fronts here. The first front is to combat the lies and the incitements by telling people the truth, that there's no such intention, and calm people down. The second one is fight the terrorists themselves. So there are two elements that we're managing here, and I'm very optimistic that we will manage this round of violence. It's different than ones before, but the way to deal with it is fight the incitements and fight the terrorists.
And speaking of fighting the incitement, and I want us all to be optimistic as you, because I don't think anybody wants to see another flare-up or war in the region, specifically right now in Israel / the West Bank. But speaking of Temple Mount and the status quo, isn't it a fact, or isn't it true, that several years ago, about a decade ago, the amount of Jewish people coming up to Temple Mount to pray was maybe 13 or 14. At this point in time, it's in the 100s. It's in 150 to 200 who are trying to come up. Given the fragile situation and no conclusion yet for the Palestinian issue in East Jerusalem, isn't it, one can argue, not incitement, but, it's waving a red flag in the face of the Palestinians? Can you see their point of seeing Jewish people coming up to prayer in their holy place, what they regard also a holy place, in the mass numbers? Isn't that a change of status quo?
Look, there are extremists on both sides. There are extreme Muslims and extreme Jews that don't like the status quo and want to change it. So if you like it or not, we're going to commit, and we commit to the status quo. And the Israeli police will not enable people that want to incite and create provocation to get on the mountain. It's too delicate. And so people are allowed to, within the status quo, if you come peacefully, Jews within the hours to get on the Temple Mount, and naturally Muslims to get on the Temple Mount for their through their beliefs and through the status quo, they will be allowed. We just finished the round of the Muslim holidays. We had the Ramadan. We had over 1 million people. Throughout the year, 3.5 million Muslims went to the mountain. And it all was very peaceful and quiet, because we want to enable them to enjoy the freedom of religion. And also Jews get on the mountain, and of course other visitors that get on the mountain. We will enable them to get on the mountain peacefully through the status quo.
The status quo that, we could argue back and forth right now, but Mr. Mayor Barakat, I want to ask you, when it comes to a long-term solution, as mayor of the city, this is something that's happening on occasion over the course of the last decade, every, several months, if not every couple of years, if not several months. What is the long-term solution in your mind, specifically for that city right now?
Well, I can tell you that if you ask the residents of Jerusalem, the Arab residents of Jerusalem, the majority of them do not want the city divided. The majority of them, consistently from year to year, you see an improvement in their quality of life, especially when they look around. Nothing to write home about with respect to the quality of life in our neighboring countries, may it be in Gaza, may it be in Syria, in Lebanon, and other places. The quality of life of the Arab Israelis are by far the best. And what we're proposing is improving their quality of life. And that trend is a very positive trend. I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to increase that trend and make their quality of life in the united city of Jerusalem even better. So I think we're on the same page with the Arab residents of Jerusalem. And when it comes to the city of Jerusalem, Don't confuse tactics and strategies. The city will stay a united, undivided city.
I mean, you know that there will be people in the political echelon, both on the Palestinian side and the Israeli side, that will argue with you on that point. But that said, finally, when it comes to the city in the next several days, what are we going to see? Heightened security and the fact that the police asked to also close off the West Bank and the territories, and the Prime Minister did not agree to do so. Do you think that that was the right move?
Yeah, I do think so. I think you will see tightened security and more measures to make sure that terrorists will be neutralized immediately on one hand, and people that are creating havoc and sometimes throw stones and are using violence to trying to deter our lives, they will not become successful. And the extra measures the police are taking will make sure that violence does not pay and terrorists will pay a heavy price. That will work. We'll use all the force we can in order to enable the residents of Jerusalem to maintain a peaceful life in the city. The city has, one of the things I'm always saying to our residents is as fast as possible, get back to normal life, and that's exactly what we're doing. We will overcome this wave. There's no doubt in my mind.
Mayor Barakat of the city of Jerusalem, I want to thank you for joining us this morning, and stay safe. Be careful with that Glock. Ami Kaufman.
Yes. Great interview.
I do also need from you the bit of headlines around this region, because we have to remind people that there are other things happening in the Middle East. Yeah. Exactly. Let us know, and they're not boring, so to speak, as the Chinese would say.
By the way, though we're covering this 24/7, we're not the top of the headlines. I just want to remind people around the world we are not the top of the headlines.
I think we're 5, or I think Israel is 5 or 6.
We're pretty low. Sometimes
below.
We're not even on the homepage. Okay,
yeah.
This is a big story in Iraq. Iraqi Air Force striked 8 ISIS leaders. There were some rumors going around that al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS, was killed in that attack.
Again, do you know that this is not the first time they keep trying to kill him? Yeah.
He's kind of turning, I think, into this kind of Bin Laden that they've been trying to catch. And there are all these reports. Did they get him? Did they not get him?
Yeah.
It's happening again. Apparently, people are saying now on the ground that he was not attacked. He got out of that unscathed. So that
and not only that, I mean, what drives me crazy, sadly we have little time, but I have to say this, is that I think the Western misunderstanding that it's not the head of the organization, that killing the head of the organization, it's not a Hollywood movie. If you kill him, that doesn't kill the ideology.
No, it doesn't. No, the ideology will continue to live.
If maybe even get stronger.
Yes.
Yes.
And very quickly, there are some reports that Washington Post journalist Jason Rezaian has been convicted. We're hearing this only this morning. Yesterday, we heard that the court reached a decision. We didn't know what. It was very vague. Now, ISNA, which is a news agency in Iran, quoted a spokesman, Gholam Hossein Mohsen Eji, saying that he has been convicted. Those are his words, but I don't have the details of his verdict. So it is still very, very vague. Nobody knows what counts he's been convicted on. Of course, he's been accused of being
this is very important because exactly in lieu of the Iran deal, which also I think yesterday Iran, or when an Iranian news agency reported that it successfully managed to carry out a missile, a ground-to-ground...
A new missile that nobody's seen yet, right?
That nobody's seen yet. It's all these moves that are quite bizarre. If they want that deal to be finalized, be it a United States, an American journalist, or a missile, that doesn't bode well for that deal.
It doesn't bode well for that deal. And there's more reports about maybe using Jason Rezaian as some kind of bargaining chip in some future... I don't know. I just want to be careful by put that out there, unconfirmed reports.
No, definitely. And lastly,
have time for one more.
I
just want to say Obama was interviewed last night on CBS's 60 Minutes, and he said that Hillary Clinton's email server idea was a mistake. It's the first time he said it was a mistake. If I could quote him, as a general proposition, when we're in these offices, we have to be more sensitive and stay as far away from the line as possible when it comes to how we handle information, how we handle our own personal data. And she made a mistake. She has acknowledged it. That is coming from the mouth of President Obama. Talking about his former Secretary of State.
We're still waiting for him to sanction a Democratic nominee, but
and we're still, by the way, waiting
for Biden.
For Joe Biden, who might in the next coming days say something.
Breaking news now. Actually, this is just one report, not confirmed, but supposedly another stabbing attack. Again, just one source, not confirmed, at Lionsgate in East Jerusalem in Israel. We will update you in the news coming up right now. Stay with us. welcome back. It is still Monday, October 12, 2015. This is still your morning edition on I-24 News, and thank you for staying with us. We're going to move on to a story that is semi-hopeful. That does happen. Against all odds, the unbelievable story of Professor Raphael Dor, who uses ballroom dancing as a medicine for Parkinson. Yes, you heard me right. Raphael Dor, an economics professor and a researcher at the IDC in Herzliya, was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease a few years ago. Though doctors told him or gave him a few healthy years left to live, he did not give up. Now, how did he not give up? He started using ballroom dancing as a medicine to slow down the disease. I want us to, first of all, take a look at what that means in terms of ballroom dancing, and also let's hear what Rafi had to say as he told it recently at a TED lecture. Let's have a look.
I would like now to be a dancer, I told myself, rather than being a Parkinson's disease patient. So I went to a dance class, and I saw young and old people dancing cha-cha-cha, Latin dance, and I'm trying to follow them. But my feet couldn't be lifted from the ground. I was sort of freezing. And I couldn't follow them. And a guy nearby me named Uri told me, Rafi, it would take miles and miles of cha-cha-cha till you'll do it right. Practice is my middle name. I like challenges. So I said to myself, I'm going to be a dancer rather than PD patient.
Well, first of all, we're happy to be joined on the phone by economical finance professor at the IDC, Professor Raphael Dor. Professor Dor, I want to thank you for joining us on the phone this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, first of all, sadly we don't have you here in studio with us, but that's okay because your story is remarkable. And I want to ask you to begin with, first of all, how many years ago were you diagnosed with Parkinson's disease?
2008, 7 years ago, I was diagnosed, and I was told that I would have only 5 years to live as I lived before, and afterwards I need nursing.
And afterwards you would need nursing, and then at
so 2 years ago, I supposed to need nursing.
And you clearly are not. Let me ask you this: first of all, you get this, diagnosis, which is a terrible thing to hear. You have this disease that nobody knows the cure for. What went through your head, and what did you fear, and what sparked you to start dancing?
At first, I had a denial. I was supposed to look as usual. It was not a dramatic change in my look, so I thought nobody's seeing it, and I could do everything, but slowly. So I let it go. But then after 2 years, I started to look for a solution because I felt that the illness, the sickness, the Parkinson is progressing. And I looked for everywhere, and I knew that I need to do some sporting activity. So I chose because I loved dancing, but as a professor, I was shy to dance. And so I started dancing, and I got to the present of dancing because of the Parkinson. Parkinson gave me 2 presents. One, dancing, and the other to help other people now to dance, because I'm establishing new groups of dancing. And after I was in the United States, so I did it, but I danced much better than then.
But speaking of the dancing, I just want to touch on what it had, the effect that it had on you, not just, I would say spiritually, but also physically. You were diagnosed, as you said, several years ago, it's approximately 7. You were given 5 years to be in a condition before you get into assisted living, so to speak. What are the parameters of your disease now?
At the parameter, because I'm taking medicine as I was supposed to for the last 3 or 4 years, the same medicine, I have no problems in doing everything that I'm supposed to do. Right. As a matter of fact, I'm much stronger than I was before because I'm trained now. All my physical conditions are much better, and the cognitive conditions are as well, because the dancing also stimulates your brain. Right. So it's as good as I was before. I'm teaching, and last semester I got excellence for teaching.
You got the excellence of teaching, which that was my next question. If you still teach, which is the most important thing.
Yes, I do. I do the same job as I've done before.
I want to say, if you can listen to us, we have in studio also the head of the neurology department at Wolfson Hospital, Professor Yair Lempel. Professor Lempel, I want to thank you also for being here with us.
Thank you.
This is a remarkable story, and I want to ask you, because Parkinson's, and for the sake of full disclosure, my father-in-law has the same disease. It's a very hard disease. My father-in-law is also a professor, and he doesn't teach anymore, sadly. But when it comes to, let's start with this. When it comes to modern medicine, where is modern medicine in terms of Parkinson's, and dare I even ask, trying to beat it, or can I just say in terms of just trying to reduce the symptoms? Where are we in that space?
There are two things that we have to speak about. First of all, when I speak according to what the professor said, it is quite logic that physical activity improve this disease. It is a normal thing that we are asking, not that we are asking, they are asking very principally to make physical activity, to, let's say, physiotherapy, to go at least 20 to 40 minutes a day. It's not only because of the activity itself, but with the activity, the reservoir of the dopamine in the brain, what is responsible for the movement, what the lack of it is responsible for the disease, can be more activity. It's going into the blood much easier. The other thing in the dancing is what we are calling ruling movement. And the ruling movement is the main movement that we need in Parkinson. We don't need a movement of the muscle itself, because there is not a weakness, but the movement to right and left, the ruling one, is very important. Now, sorry.
No, definitely. The movement, the medication, movement and physical movement, does it, well, first of all, does it help reduce the escalation of the disease? And when it comes to research about Parkinson's, are we anywhere near finding, because it's things like Parkinson's, I think, and Alzheimer's, that, much like cancer, baffle, or even sometimes more than cancer, baffle the medical community in terms of how to even combat it.
Of course. I will speak for 1 second about another degenerative disease. For example, when I am speaking about Alzheimer's, we know that music, and especially, there was a lot of studies, especially music of folk music.
Really?
And one is folk, the second one is Mozart, and at least half Bach are make improvement of the situation.
Wow. Yeah.
So that it's also logic that in the point of view of the musing with a degenerative disease is good. But it is not a situation that we can say that it stop it, because it's an ongoing degenerative disease. And the ongoing degenerative disease is in connection with some let's say, degenerative process, what we are calling today apoptosis, we are calling necrosis, all of this in the cells itself. And we don't know yet what to do with it, how to help. There's a lot of studies, but we cannot say that we can stop it. And in such a case, what the professor said, it's very important, is the thing that each of us, in case that he has Parkinson, has an individual, for him himself, the natural history of the disease. So it's very important not to hold the hand up and to say nothing. It might be that in such a patient like the professor, the natural history is at the beginning, and the physical movement can help. I cannot promise to that everybody will say, and it will be forever. Sorry.
Right. No, and the professor still, with us on Rafi, Professor Eldor, still with us on the phone. No, and I want to say that, when it comes to you, and if you had a chance to hear Professor Lempel speak, when it comes to you, I think it's a remarkable, it really takes a strong person to try and find solutions for himself. What is your hope for the near future?
I hope that I would dance until the cure to stop the sickness, to stop Parkinson, would find. As a matter of fact, I was lately checked in Mount Sinai Hospital, and the two things that were suggested to me. One is that I could, in case that I needed, to have a deep brain surgery.
Right.
It's DBS, it's called. And the second is since I performed so well because I'm dancing, they asked me whether or not I have a Parkinson or Parkinsonian disease because I was excellent in the parameter physical exams.
Right.
So I feel now much better than I felt before, and I think that I could. I hope, and I think even though that I'm a scientist, I think that my brain has developed some areas, some synapses that were not developed before, and I feel much better today than a year or two before. And the physical parameters stay the same.
Professor Eldor, I wish for you that you keep on dancing for many, many, many more years. I want to thank you for joining us, and also Professor Lempel, you're staying in studio with us as we move along. Something slightly lighter, but hopeful. Hope is always good. With Ami Kaufman and the viral spiral that is the Web Review.
Speaking of hopeful, let's talk about a presidential hopeful named Kanye West, who announced a few weeks ago at the Video Music Awards that he might be running for president, or that he is definitely running for president.
Yeah.
You know who had something to say about that? Actually, President Obama himself was at a fundraiser yesterday. 1,300 people had to pay, by the way, anywhere between $250 to $10,000 at that fundraiser.
Nice.
And he had something to say. He said in a little while you're going to hear from a guy who was getting into politics, which is of course Kanye West. He said he has some tips for him. You got to deal with strange characters who behave as if they're on a reality TV show. And I also want to say, I also want to show one clip of what he said to Kanye.
This is President Obama giving advice to Kanye West.
Do you really think that this country is going to elect a black guy from the south side of Chicago with a funny name to be president of the United States? That is crazy. That's crazy.
Not going to happen, apparently, according to Obama. The man with the strange name, of course, from the south side of Chicago.
Yeah, black man from the south side of Chicago. Crazy stuff. And listen, I think that if the American presidential campaign ends up being a race between Donald Trump and Kanye West, then...
Oh, my God. That's a debate I want to watch.
Exactly, and I don't think that that's that far from reality.
No, you're not too far.
I'm not too far from reality.
Yeah. Let's not forget who's leading the polls in the GOP side.
Exactly. And
when you weren't here last week, I showed a picture of David Letterman, who is now wearing a very, very shaggy beard, and it seems like a trend. I want to show you another actor who's now wearing a very... Look at this guy. You remember him? Randy Quaid, one of the stars of Independence Day, I guess.
And Dennis Quaid's brother.
Exactly. So he was
Wait, is he like the new Unabomber? What's going on?
Oh, thank you. I was going to use that word, Unabomber.
Okay.
It looks look at him. He's been arrested because he's been wanted in Santa Barbara, California. In 2010, he was caught squatting. That's already 5 years ago. 2010, he was caught squatting with his wife. They escaped to Canada, and they've been living there since. When they tried to get back into Vermont, they were arrested, and now California wants them. And you know what? I want to tell you another really weird thing about Randy Quaid. He says that he and his wife were in fear of their lives from a shadowy group they call the Hollywood Star Wickers. That's the name of the group. And according to them, this group is responsible for the deaths of their friends and fellow actors David Carradine, Heath Ledger, and Natasha Richardson. According to them, these three actors were killed by the Hollywood Star Wickers.
Okay, Mr. Quaid has got to stop smoking whatever he's smoking. Not boding well for neither his looks or okay.
I'm glad you brought up drugs.
Yes.
Because it's a perfect segue into my next. Perfect. It couldn't be better.
Yes.
There's something called now on the web that you can buy called the shambong.
Shambong?
Which is, of course, comes from the word bong, which is used for and champagne. As you can see here, this it is making. You can
Professor
get this
Lempel is horrified. The shambong will allow you to drink champagne faster.
Now, these are a couple of stoners that wanted to make a bigger and better bong. It didn't work out. They said, okay, let's try it with alcohol. They do it with champagne. I want to show you one video of how this kind of thing works. Really quick. It's a short one. It's a short one. for $25, that
can be yours. Is that a shambong, or are you just happy to see it?
Right.
That one.
Very well.
Sadly, all the spiral viral time that we have. When we get back, something entirely different, namely sports. Stay with us. First, the news. I-24 News edition on this. My God, what date is it?
I have no idea.
I have no idea. I've got, what are you guys good for? Sorry. On this October, I believe it is the 12th, it is the time, actually, before Danny Swibel, who is very low-key, to go to our enthusiast. And that would be Shai Ringel of The Tube, from The Tube magazine. Anything and everything digital. I'm looking at your shirt. Bring up your hands. What does it say?
Pet Shop Boys.
Okay.
What's?
You're
so ignorant.
I'm so ignorant. I'm a very,
it's
very. It
amazing.
is the Pet Shop Boy. Yeah, I suck.
Yeah.
I do. I'm the first one to admit it. Other than me having no cultural background whatsoever,
Yeah.
what is new in The Tube in the world of digital technology?
Okay, let's talk about trees, because we're too digital here. Let's talk about digital trees. Solar trees. One was installed in North Carolina. We have a report.
A solar tree. Okay, let's take a look. We have a report.
Crews put the finishing touches on a solar tree at NC State. The 16-foot tree incorporates 6 solar panels. It allows students to charge their laptops and phones. The tree is a gift from NC State's Park Scholars. The group of students raised the funds for the project, costing about $45,000. Nathan Petter and Tori Huffman are part of that group.
North Carolina State University has committed to advance sustainable energy as part of a moral imperative and economic advantage. And we were inspired by this commitment of our university and wanted to make a visual representation so the students get engaged as well.
Park Scholar class has a legacy gift that they give to the university as they're leaving, and our class was really interested in sustainability and renewable energy, and we wanted kind of a visual way to represent that, and so we thought this was a beautiful way to kind of put solar in the visual eye line of everyone that was kind of on campus.
Shai Ringel and Danny Swibel, before we continue, I find this a horrific invention, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Solar trees. Danny's terrified.
Here we go.
Think about it. If we have solar trees, that gives the rest of the world liberty to murder all the real trees. Really, to murder all the real trees and say that they can just get rid of, of forests, of tropical forests,
Solar trees can do so much.
Okay, what can solar trees do?
They can charge your iPhone. That's about it. Yeah. It's a cute thing. It's not that exciting.
When it comes to oxygen, very important question. Do they do not? Exactly.
No, nothing. But there are
comes
inventions that try to bring solar power to kind of trees. And they will be able to produce much more than just charge your iPhone.
Charge your iPhone.
But
just charge your car.
Yeah.
Your electrical car.
It's very important for the future that we'll have a lot of places
solar panels.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is a cute invention, but that's it. It's cute and nothing more.
And we had Shai Ringel demolish it as a cute invention, nothing more.
People worthless.
Yeah, but it's okay. Moving along.
I want to talk about Twitter.
I want you to talk about Twitter.
I'm glad you want me to talk about Twitter. Twitter announced Jack Dorsey to be their new CEO. He's back, and now there's talk about reorganization inside
Jack Dorsey?
Twitter.
He's 12?
He's kind of 12.
He's kind of 12.
He's kind of 12. He's one of the co-founders
of Twitter.
He's the one
he was 6
to tweet the first tweet. Which is like a big thing, apparently.
Yeah.
But the interesting story about Twitter is that they have a new feature called Moments. Now, the idea behind Twitter is that it's live. Moments. It's live. It's the fact. That's why a lot of politicians like Twitter. A lot of journalists love Twitter.
Sadly so.
Yeah, and it became kind of a media outlet of itself, where journalists give information on Twitter. But the general public still is not into it as other groups. They are much more into Facebook, which is a lot simpler. Right. So Twitter are looking to make the experience itself much simpler, and they introduced a feature called Moments, where people from Twitter create their own material from tweets and pictures that people tweet and videos to make it much more of a kind of a newspaper, you can say, where they gather
a bunch of like tweets that seem to be relevant with a little bit of video, and there you go.
Yeah, and they take everything from Twitter, which means it's user generated,
right?
But it is people pick the tweets and videos 24 hours 7 and make it kind of
and I gotta say, I mean, this is not for the greater audience. I'm speaking just as a journalist. My fear with that, and that is also the problem with Twitter, I believe, is that it's uncorroborated. A tweet is not a fact.
Yeah.
A tweet is not a fact. And if you take several tweets and put them together on a page, you've got a bunch of non-corroborated or two-sourced facts and call them a newspaper, but it is fast and immediate.
So they say that this will be kind of journalism because...
a kind of journalism.
Yeah, because someone will fact-check the tweets.
Who? Somebody will fact-check the tweets?
From Twitter. Someone picks the tweets
and fact-checks them.
Yeah.
Okay, that kind of returns the role of the editor.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have editors at
right,
Twitter
they've hired
now.
They had a bunch of really high-profile journalists, I think. And they're going to lay off a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That will never happen here, Danny. Don't worry. Yes. Okay. And...
Okay, let's talk about politics. Hillary Clinton. I know, you're so happy when I talk about Hillary Clinton and her connection to Google Alphabet now. Hillary Clinton has very good connections inside Google. A lot of Google, now Alphabet, especially Chairman Eric Schmidt, who used to run Google. He's one of her big donors. Yeah, thank you.
I'll finish your lines.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
He's one of the big donors, and now he's building a startup to help Hillary Clinton win the 2016 election. He gathered a lot of big developers from all around Silicon Valley. He gathered them, he took them to Brooklyn, just next to Hillary Clinton's headquarters, and he's building a startup to help Hillary Clinton take the election. He asked them to develop new tools that can help Hillary find the people who will be able to, who will want to vote for Hillary, and
No. This is a very, very, very rich man, and it's a frightening thing because I think Danny Sorbel will know what I'm talking about because you shared my post on Facebook. The New York Times had a fascinating article the other day saying that there are 120 million monopoly pieces in this upcoming elections, and that basically just 158 families have provided nearly half of the early money for efforts to capture the White House.
Yeah.
And they are overwhelmingly white, rich, older, and male, he being one of them.
Yes.
Okay. And definitely, listen, money like that behind Hillary Clinton is a big boost to her campaign.
Yeah.
Just the notion of Google actually supporting that, they're putting people in the White. Well, you know, I'll stop saying anything. But yes, I refer you to that article of the New York Times. It kind of talks to that. It's quite interesting.
It's very interesting, and he's really one of the donors. But it's interesting to see how he puts his money into the campaign. You can say he's putting it to add TV ads and things like that.
No, he's actually a startup.
He's taking developers to develop tools to help, like. They are developing a tool that will map neighborhoods and will take, okay, this neighborhood is likely to vote Hillary Clinton. Go there and convince people to go
that's
vote.
What they should do.
To go vote. And this neighborhood is unlikely to vote Hillary Clinton. Leave them.
Leave them, yeah.
So they won't
waste
go
your
and
energy.
vote.
Yeah.
They have tools, and they can map the entire United States.
The grassrooting.
To house to see who is likely to vote Hillary Clinton. And
I'm going to finish that line by saying with all the information that Google has about each and every one of us.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, terrifying. Thank you, Shai Ringel, for that, enlightening piece
Glad to be of help.
Yeah, Big Brother information. Shai, it's time to leave you alone, lock you in studio, and glare and gaze at your T-shirt. But move to Danny Swibel with sports, finally an issue I am a complete aficionado of. Yes.
Yeah, as we've talked about before, yes. When we need to escape from all the horrors and horrors of the world, what do we talk about? We talk about sports. Oh, yes. What will we do without sports? It's beautiful. Right now, it's October.
Yes.
October is the time of baseball. This happens to be the time of my birthday as well. The World Series would always fall on my baseball, which was a perfect thing. It was always ideal.
Unless your people lose.
Yeah. My team, though, sadly, was never in the World Series. The Cubs have not won the World Series since 1908, but now they are in the playoffs, and they are kicking some ass, okay? They are doing awesome. Not that I'm a biased journalist, but go Cubs go, everybody. Go Cubs go.
I dare you to put that on your head.
Okay, this is the big deal.
Yes.
Okay, we got to talk. We got to talk
we
shop,
have to talk.
okay?
That is the look. That's Danny Swibel.
This is
never
important.
Do this for me.
This is very important, okay? Right now, the Cubs are doing something they haven't done in over 100 years.
Yeah, because that's in 1908.
1908, they're winning. And they're doing it with this ace pitcher of theirs who is having, his name is Jake Arrieta, and he's had the best second half of baseball, almost in baseball history. So this young team of rookies is taking it to the whole league, and they're the talk of the town. And in the Back to the Future Part 2, Marty went to 2015, and he's like, whoa, the Cubs won the World Series. 2015 is now, folks.
Yeah, I want to tell you that on, I think on October 15, 2015, that is the first, that is the first trip that Marty made.
Okay, you know what my rabbi once said? He's like, know what, anything's possible. There could be peace in the Middle East. The Messiah could come, and one day the Cubs can win the World Series. So I'm putting it out there, folks. Peace in the Middle East. The Messiah is coming, and the Cubbies might win the World Series.
I'm stuck at my rabbi. I'm still there.
Right.
Wait, I'm still at my what does your rabbi say to you?
Do I need a rabbi?
Okay, you think they stand a chance? Who are the biggest competitors at this point?
Okay,
I know that you're emotionally involved in this, but who are the big competitors?
So currently they're playing the St. Louis Cardinals, which are their oldest rival, and the Cardinals are known to have a track record of winning a lot of World Series in the last decade. So they're going to be a tough team, and right now they play tonight. They're tied 1-1, and it's a best-of-5 series. So first 1 to 3 wins.
Right.
So that series is going on, and it's going strong, and it's happening tonight. Now the other National League game, which is between the New York Mets, who are another team who doesn't make it. We always talk Yankees, right?
Yankees, and where the heck are the Mets?
So here where the Mets are, the Yankees got knocked out of the playoffs, so the Mets are playing the Dodgers, and there were some very controversial things that happened in the game.
Such as?
Last night. One of the players slid into second, and he was trying to stop a double play, and he broke one of the players' legs. He broke the shortstop player's leg. Very controversial call. We actually have a piece.
Yeah,
we have time for the piece?
Let's take a look.
Seventh inning, Game 2 of the National League Division Series. Mets up 2-1. Dodgers' Howie Kendrick hits a line drive up the middle.
Gloved by Murphy. Wow, did Chase Utley go in hard at second. Tejada is down.
The runner, Chase Utley, who was on first, ran hard at second while the tying run crossed home plate. Met shortstop Ruben Tejada making a play to prevent the go-ahead score from being on second. Watch how Utley comes into the base, sending Tejada flying into the air. Utley's helmet flies off. He hits his head on Tejada's knee and then the dirt. The Met shortstop not getting up after the play, his right fibula broken. But did Utley injure Tejada intentionally?
The intent is to go out there and break up the slide. The mechanics specifically regarding this play maybe could have hit the dirt a little earlier, but the take-home message is he was doing what he's been taught to do.
It wasn't a slide. It's a tackle.
Fans in an uproar. One tweeting, there's a difference between a clean takeout slide and tackling somebody. Others maintain it's just playoff ball. Tweeting, was hard, not dirty. Hashtag game changer. This isn't the first time Utley has made a hard play like this. In 2010, near the end of the regular season, Utley, then playing for the Phillies, took out Tejada in a similar play. Joe Torre, now a Major League Baseball executive, says the play is under review to determine if the slide was excessive.
I'm still watching replays of it.
Tejada looked like a receiver coming over the middle, having his feet knocked out from under him by a defensive back.
Danny, I can't believe I'm, putting my hat into the mix, my non-existent hat, because you have one. That said, I mean, it does look like a slide into it. I mean, he's done what he's taught to do, right?
The thing is, but they are ruling it illegal. and he is suspended 2 games because the thing is you have to be going for the base. And it's hard to go against what the umpire says, but it seemed like he was going around the base and trying to prevent a double play, not necessarily hurt the player, but in the end the base was here and he went the other way and he took him out. So this is affecting that game, that whole series perhaps, because Mets might have went on to win. So the winner of the Mets-Dodgers series goes on to play the winner of the Cubs-Cardinals series for the National League.
For the National League. I mean, it's kind of a hard toss-up because it's like the year of the underdog when it comes to American baseball. I mean, there's the one question that I will always ask you over and over again. Why in God's name is it called the World Series? Only Americans play it.
That is not true. People in South America, in Asia, in Japan, South Korea, they play too.
In the World Series itself, not just in the streets.
They play in their country.
No, they play in there's a Korean player now. There's a lot of Japanese players, South American players. I beg to differ.
Not teams. Teams.
Yeah, well, I know.
Throw your hat at
Well, that's how Americans are. You know, we think the world revolves around us. Sorry.
There you go. Okay, folks, that was the hard-hitting news that you needed to hear this morning. But take a look at the Cubs and watch out for them. They're coming for you or for Danny Swibel. Of course, check us out on Twitter, Facebook, whatnot. I-24 News Morning Edition, the place to start your day because you get to dance with Shai Rangel. Now stay on with the channel for the news.